Montana Music Summit. Great panels yesterday, really excited about today. Want to say thank you to our sponsors. I know it's all up there and you can see it, but thank you so much because they have made this possible for us. Outside, I know you heard it before if you were here yesterday, but outside is a survey that says, how did you hear about us or where are you staying? Please fill that out because we use that to get the second half of our grant from Destination Missoula. And boy, would we like to get the second half of that grant. So please do us a favor, fill it out, put it in the basket. I am very happy to have these two gentlemen here today. I'm going to introduce Tom Webster. He probably knows everybody in the room, probably has had a beer with you in 1979. And so let him announce the rest of it. Tom Webster, Tim Bierman.
Okay, welcome to the inaugural Montana Music Summit. It was a great day yesterday, very informative. I learned a lot and hope we continue the great panels today. It's my great pleasure to moderate this small panel, just Tim and I. Tim, of course, is the general manager of the Pearl Jam 10 Club. And we're going to talk a lot about the Pearl Jam and their DIY ethos, as we like to call it, the do-it-yourself, how they've come to the forefront of the music scene. I would say, this is my opinion, of course, but I would say with the demise of Mr. Tom Petty, I would say they're probably the best American band existing right now. They're certainly the best live band that I've seen in years. Real quick, Tim and I, 40 years ago, I was living in Dunaway Hall, and I met this guy from Alton, Illinois named Tim Bierman with his friend Drew, and he was living in Elrod, and that was the start of a long and fruitful and great friendship. We've watched each other as our careers grow, been involved in our families and everything. Tim and I used to work all the shows at the Adams Center back when we were undergrads. We worked Huey Lewis, ZZ Top, The Tubes, all sorts of stuff. We used to travel to shows when we were younger. We went to REM and Talking Heads in Seattle, and in the mid-'80s, Bruce Miklas, who's up there, the proprietor of Rockin' Rudy's, Tim and I,
sponsor of
the sponsor,
summit.
of course, with three of us formed the Missoula Blues and Jazz Society, and we did all sorts of shows here. Coco Taylor, Les Elgart, Woody Herman's Thundering Herd, Buddy Guy, Junior Wells, Eddie the Chief Clearwater, just dozens of great shows. And so both Tim and I, we graduated in '84, and Tim became a co-owner of Rockin' Rudy's, and I took my history degree straight to the Shack restaurant, and was proud of that. So anyway, but we kept in touch through the years. In fact, before I got on to university in '94, I worked for Bruce and Tim at Rockin' Rudy's, and so I'm going to let Tim take over. He left Rockin' Rudy's in '97 and went to work in Amoeba Records, the great indie record store in San Francisco, in 1997, and then I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thanks everybody for coming out today. Yesterday's panels were great. I'm happy to see some of the panelists here from yesterday and some familiar faces. So, yeah, Tom's right. We had quite a time here back in the '80s and '90s with Bruce and everybody else here in this community, kind of working from scratch to build up what was at that point kind of a fledgling music scene here. Now it's gotten so much better, but when I left in '97, I had this idea that I was going to go have the ultimate record store job. I thought that's kind of where my life was going to lead me, to Amoeba Records, to be a buyer there. And I went down there and found out quickly that there were a lot of people in this country that know a lot more about records than I did. And I was kind of lonely and out of place there in San Francisco, and I only lasted for about a year. The year that I was there was there was a El Nino that came through, and there was the city of San Francisco got 100 inches of rain over the period of that winter, and it was miserable. I was miserable, and I didn't really have any friends or anything. I was a single guy, and one day in May, my friend Jeff Ament called me up, and it was a Saturday, and he said, "Hey, I know it's kind of late notice. I was going to go to the Sonics-Lakers playoff game tomorrow in LA with my friend Ben Harper, but he forgot that he was had to enjoy his first Father's Day. He just had a kid, and it was Father's Day, and he said, "Hey, if you can get off work or get down here or whatever, you know, you can be my guest at the game." And I figured out a way to get down there, flew down, and he picked me up at the airport. And on the way over to the forum, he said, "Yeah, we have this thing." I'm sure Mike was probably working in the office at that point, or maybe he had just left, but Mike McGinley was part of that team, that Pearl Jam team back then. But Jeff said, "We have this fan club with all these members, and they're very active, but we're hemorrhaging money from it." And I was telling Kelly Curtis, the manager, that we need somebody like Tim Bierman to come in and turn it into kind of a retail thing. And I didn't really think too much about it at that point. We went to the game. Flea played the national anthem on his piccolo trumpet, and we sat with Flea and Zach De La Roca at the game, and I was like, "Hey, this is pretty cool, you know. I like this. This is way better than Amoeba right now." And so the next weekend, I was coming here for some kind of event or whatever, and I stopped. I changed planes in Seattle. And there was a snowstorm, and my flight got canceled, and I had to spend the night there. So I called Jeff and his wife Pandora came and got me, and went back to their apartment and had some wine and dinner. And I was getting ready to say goodnight to them, and I said, "Oh, by the way, you know, the other day you were talking about that the idea of having someone like me, like a Tim Bierman, come in." And I said, I know where you can find a slightly used but still ready to go Tim Bierman if that is of any interest to you. And the next week I was back in Seattle interviewing for the job, and I moved up the week after that, and that was '98, May of '98. So that was kind of my start there. The first series of shows that we did that I was a part of the Pearl Jam team, one of the shows happened to be the first time that the band played at the stadium here, on the other end of the stadium, the north end of the stadium. And it was pretty cool to come back and especially now to look back on that time and realize how much has happened since then. Pretty special way to start the whole gig. Someone's phone's ringing.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah, I'll just keep talking if you don't stop me. That's
Obviously, everybody knows Jeff Ament from Big Sandy, Montana, the bass player for Pearl Jam. Went to school here in the early '90s. So how did you meet Jeff, and what's your, I mean, obviously you two are great friends, and I've known Jeff for years also, but what was the genesis?
Yeah, well,
of that?
in the '80s when Jeff was here, I'm not sure what years those were,
81,
81,
yeah.
82. We weren't friends or anything, but we ran in the same circles. We both, played music, and the one thing that we did that we crossed paths a lot on was we played pickup basketball over at the University Center. I did that pretty much whenever I was supposed to go to class. I would just go there and play basketball. It was like the thing I like to do.
He did get his geology degree.
I got my geology degree.
Yeah.
But Jeff and I both played a lot of pickup basketball. So we knew a lot of the same people. We knew each other, recognized each other through music and sports. But then when Jeff came back after they finished 10, Jeff came back to Missoula to start looking for a place to build a house. And he contacted one of his old friends, Eric Cushman, also a mutual friend of ours, and Bruce's and Charlie's, and Eric said, "Hey, you should check out Tim Bierman. He's at this record store, and you might remember him from back in the day." And we were at the store over on Third Street, at the old food bank, and what's there now? I don't even know what's there now. But Noteworthy. So I was in there one day, I'll never forget, and Jeff and his brother Barry came in, and they had an advance cassette of 10, and they said, "Hey, you should check this out." And I remember saying, "Oh yeah, it's pretty cool, but have you heard this single by this new band Nirvana?" I had an advanced 12-inch single, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and they were kind of like, "What the fuck, man? We're here to talk about this band. That's a totally different thing." I was a total idiot, but anyway, I had a spare bedroom in my house, and Jeff and I kind of hit it off, and then he kind of needed a place to land every once in a while, and I said, "Yeah, go ahead and you can just put your stuff in my room there, my spare room, and when you're in town to work on your place or whatever, you're more than welcome to just use my house. And it's sort of spawned a good friendship from there on out. My dad passed away in '92, and my mom and I were gonna take a trip to commemorate his life somehow. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were thinking about going to Europe. We thought about going to Russia for some reason, and I was talking to Jeff about this because he did a lot of traveling, and I wanted to get his input, and he said, you know, you should just come with us because we're gonna go play Europe and with U2 and Neil Young and Booker T and the MGs, and he's like, you can just come tag along with us for a few shows, and I thought, yeah, that sounds kind of cool.
By the way, that Pearl Jam Neil Young tour in Europe was one of the best shows I've ever.
Yeah, that Slane Castle thing in Ireland was ridiculous. I could talk about that for an hour.
Come on.
Yeah. So I went over there with my mom and got to know everybody in the crew and management, and started a kind of a what's turned into a lifelong relationship with not just Jeff but everybody in the band. And every time I went somewhere on vacation, I always made sure that there was a Pearl Jam tour going on there, and that's just how I traveled from there on out.
Well, you were there, and I didn't get to go. I was working as a technical writer, and I had to go to Sun Valley. My wife got my tickets, but they played in the the University Theater in
Yeah,
*93.
that's right.
And tell them that this is a great story because they were 2 hours late getting to the show, and now I know the reason why.
Yeah, in a great tradition of Missoula concerts, and pretty much all college towns, I'm sure, I had the epic throwdown pre-funk at my house over on 6th Street, and the band came, which is amazing to think that would even happen the way things are nowadays. But the band came over to the house, and we put the it was the NBA Finals, I think, or maybe it was the Eastern Conference Finals. Anyway, the Bulls were playing. Eddie's a big Bulls fan. Bulls Sixers, was that a thing in the final? Anyway, the game was on. There was a keg. People were drinking. There were probably 100 people in my house, and the
It
band.
wasn't a very big house.
It wasn't a big house. There were a lot of people outside and everything, but they didn't want to leave until the game was over, and so I left. I left my own house, my own party, because I was looking after the opening band, this band called Oregon Box. So I came over to kind of get them on stage and everything, and everybody's like, where are they? Eric Johnson, this was before cell phones, and everybody was kind of mad at me, I'm sure, for keeping them away, but anyway, that's that story.
2 hours late, they
Yeah,
showed
I
up.
don't know if it was quite that long.
Well,
but it was,
I heard it was a great show.
yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
show.
And then one other story before we get into the nuts and bolts of the 10 Club. In '93, I had my own promotion company, Last Best Place Productions, and I had booked this band called Fire Hose, and the bass player was Mike Watt, who used to be in the Minutemen, and it was one of Jeff Amen's heroes. Mike's just this great bass player, and I booked him at the Badlander in the basement room, and Tim threw a pre-party there.
Amazing.
Amazing. So Jeff and Mike Watt were over. I was down. I stopped over to say hi, but I was down taking care of business. I was the actual promoter and sold the show out. I remember we had Griff Williams was our MC. Whitney's going to be a moderator here, her older brother, and of course Jeff showed up, and it was a great show. Leslie Run opened up for him, and after the show, I'll never forget, Mike Watt and Tim and Jeff and Griff, we all went out and we went to Charlie B's, of course, and then late in the morning we ended up at the Oxford. We were smoking cigars in the Oxford at 3 in the morning. I'm sitting with Mike Watt and Jeff Amen and Tim and two of my best buddies, Griff and Tim, and Mike Watt, who's a vegetarian. We talked him into having brains and eggs with us, and that was just a very memorable night. And just having Jeff's presence in Missoula is really a great thing.
Well, I'm going to tie Rockin' Rudy's in with this one too, because that was a pretty important week in the history of Missoula and Jeff and Pearl Jam, I think, because this party was in May. This show was in May of '93, and later that year in October, Pearl Jam would release Versus, which was at the time had the largest opening week of sales of any record. I think they beat out Garth Brooks at that point or whatever. They sold 1 million records in a week upon the release of that record, and that record is 25 years old this month, right? So I started thinking about that because there's all this promotion going on around the 25th anniversary of this record, and I realized that October is 5 months later than this party that we had in May, and I remember putting the speakers up in the window, and Jeff had an advanced copy of a sequence of that record that we played for, I don't know, the 50 or 40 people that were at that party. We played Verses for people, out in the public of one of the most, really, it's literally one of the most important rock records that the country or the world had seen at that point. And it was just kind of cool that croquet game, barbecue in the backyard of my house kind of had that moment. And I didn't think about it until much later in life that was that big of a span. Nowadays,
Can you say viral?
Yeah.
Somebody would have, they would have recorded that, and the secret would have been out 5 months in advance.
And my dog ate a steak off of somebody's plate at the party.
The moving couch you had, you had a Newfoundland dog that was very big.
Yeah.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what your role is with the 10 Club.
Sure.
The amazing thing about Pearl Jam is they've actually taken very decisive steps not to be on the cover of People and on the cover. They refused to do videos for years. They just did it their own way, and they had a great team. And their 10 Club does amazing stuff. So let's talk about the 10 Club.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. Like I go to conferences like this, and sometimes sit on panels, and sometimes just chat with people, and probably a little more knowledgeable people in the music industry can kind of understand what's going on. But when I meet people in all walks of life, they'll say, "Oh, you're the president of a fan club, man. What's your real job? Or what is that a full-time job, or what do you do with the rest of your time?" And it's become such a kind of funny thing that I've never really wanted to change my title. But the truth of the matter is, that's a small operation that Pearl Jam has built around it, with managers and all the way down to the people that pick, pack, and ship the orders. But we keep everything that we can in house. We talked yesterday on the panels. We talked a lot about kind of how if you have a band, you can assign certain things to members of the band who are going to go out. Like you're going to be in charge of the booking. You're going to be in charge of social media. We kind of do that same thing. Obviously, the band's not out there packing T-shirts up and sending them out, but they have a small staff of people that they trust and that they know and have a relationship with to do those things, instead of sending it out to a third-party company they fulfill all the T-shirts for 1,400 different clients that they call their customer service. They have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to a certain artist. Fans, to have a connection with the band and the fans, if the fans can feel that connection, if they call a number and someone picks up the phone in Seattle and says, "Yeah, I'm in Seattle, I'm at the Pearl Jam headquarters, I've got your T-shirt here, I'm sorry we fucked up that order, but we're gonna make it right for you." That's so much better than calling someone who answers the phone in Charlottesville and says, "Oh yeah, the Foo Fighters, I don't know, that's a funny name for a band, but yeah, So,
In context, Charlottesville is the place where most of these bands run. It's a big company that runs all these fan clubs.
really?
Well, I may know that it isn't you.
I just use that as an example of a random town in the southeast where music today might be. But I think that when you look at the 10 Club now, it's so much more than just the organization that runs the fans, or runs the communication and the relationship between the band and the fans. It's also all the online merchandising, all the online ticketing, all of the event-based stuff that just involves members of the fan club, which is a pretty significant portion of what Pearl Jam does nowadays. So we're a record label, we're a fan club, we're a management company, we're a fulfillment company, we're all those things that we can be, because nowadays the record companies don't provide those services anymore, and someone has to pick up the slack. That's what we
Okay,
do.
their manager's Kelly Curtis, very well respected. What's his role as the manager, but how did he get started with the band? And he's been with them since the inception, so.
Yeah, actually, Goon could probably talk more to
And-
Kelly's history than me, but.
And Maria also.
Oh, Maria, right. Maria was around for Kelly's early days when he probably, I'm not even gonna go there, down the road of what's some of the debauchery that happened back then. But Kelly was a roadie for Heart, basically. He was a t-shirt slinger and a publicist and all sorts of things. He was in production, worked in a production company, and was just kind of around the scene in Seattle back in the 70s, and when Green River broke up and Mother Love Bone started, I guess. I'm talking out of my ass here. I don't know the exact history of exactly what happened here, but somewhere along the way, Kelly got connected with Jeff and Stone, essentially, and became the person that they kind of asked to help look over their careers. And he's been there ever since. So since the beginning of Mother Love Bone until now.
And he's very effective, very protective of his band.
Yeah.
We actually got Kelly to come here to teach classes a few years ago, which was a very rare thing indeed. Your whole team came over.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so one thing I want to ask you about, in Tim's past, this probably has a lot to do with this, but in his past, he was a huge Deadhead. He used to go to a lot of Dead shows. And if you know anything about the Grateful Dead, one of the main things about a Grateful Dead show is that they allow recording. They have whole sections, or they did. I haven't been there.
They still do, yeah.
Still
they
do.
have that
But they,
again.
they let people record all their own shows. And Pearl Jam, now one of the coolest things they do is they record all their shows off the soundboard and market that to the fans. And of course, Rockin' Rudy's just got the Missoula show this week, 3-disc set. And so tell us how that started and what the whole basis.
We
of
tie
that.
the Grateful Dead stuff in all the time because it's a huge factor for me. But really, what started the reason that we started the bootleg stuff was because Kelly, who we just talked about, he loved the idea of those like really cheesy audience tapes that people would put on CDs, in Italy or whatever. And we sold the shit out of them at Rockin' Rudy's. We had a giant rack of those things all the time. And when Pearl Jam would come to town, Kelly would come in and drop a couple of grand on those things because he loved collecting those things. And he always, when I started working there in '98, because he associated that with me, he's like, this would be a cool thing to do. We should bootleg the bootleggers. We should take their recordings and put them out so we can control the artwork. The artwork on these things was hilarious. Like people would put all these bad logos on there and these shitty photos, and then like some Italian would like try to translate a lyric or something, and it was comical, which was so bad it was good. And some of the shows were really great, but the recordings were never really that great. So we went to the record company. We were at Epic at the time, and Steve Barnett had just started there as president. His name came up yesterday in a panel. But anyway, we said, hey, let's record every show and put them all out. We're playing, and this was the year 2000. We had 144 shows, I think, or 72 shows in 2000, 72 shows in 2003. So we put out 72 live recordings with Sony, and we got like, it was ridiculous. We got like, I don't know, 13 or something in the Billboard top.
Yeah, you
200.
broke the record for
Some
the
kind of-
number of broke the Beatles record for the number of albums in the top 200.
Tom knows these things. But it was kind of a mess, because the record stores were like, oh, I have all these, I sold all my Boston shows, but I have all these Philly shows, and now they're all, everything's all cluttering up the racks and everything, and the record company had to take all these returns. It was a big pain in the ass. And while it was a rousing success and everybody was very excited about it, we decided to take it to the next level. And this all has to do with sort of our catalog reverting back to us and publishing deals happening and changing. We were able to work out a deal where we could record the shows ourselves and then release them ourselves through the 10 Club, which became a very lucrative and super exciting and fun way to release music. And since then, we really, literally, with the exception of a couple of small tours and a couple of individual shows, we've pretty much released everything out into the wild. Nowadays, we do it a little more 21st century. We have a fulfillment partner that does our on-demand burn CDs and ships them out, and also fulfills the digital files for us. And they're called Nugsnet. They came from the Grateful Dead world. This guy, Brad Serling, was one of the archivists for the Dead. We met, when I first started, Kelly and I went down to San Francisco. We met with Bob Weir and Mickey Hart and this guy, Brad Serling, and Peter, what was his name? He was managing the Dead at the time. Anyway, we were going to start this big coalition of bands, and we were all going to get together, and we're going to put out all these bootlegs together and kind of take over the music industry. Of course, it never happened because it's all a bunch of burnout hippies that we were, but Brad was there, and Brad was this young guy who was like he was working for some digital service at the time, pre-Napster kind of thing. And he could tell that this was going to be a thing, and he knew how to do all this stuff. So kept in touch with him over the years, and now his streaming service is really, really successful. I don't know if anybody here knows about Nugsnet, but they kind of cater mostly to jam bands, but they also do Springsteen and Metallica and Chili Peppers, and they have a standalone app that streams just live music, a lot of video stuff. So kind of a cool thing to check out if you like live music, live recorded music. So that's the bootlegs. It's been an incredible success. Now this is our 8th one. So 8 years ago we started releasing one show a year where we'd go back into the vault and try to find the multi-track tapes from classic shows and put them together and then release them on a multi-vinyl set. So we do that once a year. It's a really cool thing too.
Yeah, and another thing I want to get into, as you folks probably know, Pearl Jam gives a lot back to the community and back to all the band members have their causes and everything. We won't go into great detail about that, but tell us, you've told me some great stories the last couple of days about what you're doing, the beer thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Tell us some of the philanthropic, he's got a great story about this, some of the philanthropic efforts that the band's doing. And of course, Missoula was all about Rock the Vote and everything. So
we'll get to that too, but you want to do that little slideshow? I just put a couple pictures together to kind of take us through what we did this year for our tour. So Pearl Jam went out, we did some shows in South America, 5-6 shows down there, and then we did a European run. But the main emphasis this year was on these 7 stadium shows that we did in the US. And we hadn't played Seattle in 5 years. And the last time we played Seattle, we played a Key Arena show. I think we had, so Key Arena is 15,000 or 16,000 people. I think we had 2,000 people on the guest list, or 1,500 people on the guest list. And it sold out in like 2 seconds. And it was just a big cluster, and no one really enjoyed it. It was a lot of pressure and everything. So the band has a tendency to sort of stress out when it comes to Seattle. And so when it came time to put these shows together, we sort of went to the band and said, if we're going to do this, it's going to be the same amount of stress no matter what. So let's just kind of blow it out and let's do something really cool. And of course, the band came back and said, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to play 2 Safeco fields, then we want to do something impactful for the community. Every show that Pearl Jam plays, there's a ticket add-on that goes to a local charity that's impactful of something that the band's aligned with. A lot of times it's education, arts, music programs, stuff like that. So we sat around a table and everybody's like, Seattle, we're in Seattle, it's the homelessness. We have a giant homeless problem here. We have, arguably one of the richest economies in the country and the world. And yet people are out on the streets. Let's figure out a way to kind of talk to that. Of course, we thought, oh yeah, we'll just raise some money and we'll give it away and everything will be fine. But that's because, again, we're a bunch of burnout hippies. We don't really know what we're doing. But once we started to do this, we went to some partners and members of the community and said, hey, we want to raise $1 million for homelessness by adding some money onto our ticketing and put this fund together and then give it away. And they're like, well, that's great for sure, but you're setting yourself up for failure. And why don't you try to raise $10 million for homelessness? And we were like, that is crazy talk. But that became our goal. And so we launched this program with the help of some partners in town to kind of go for it, and we did. The fun parts of it, and that's what we'll go through here. There's a lot of resources to check out what we're doing with the money. We have an advisory committee that knows what they're talking about, who are taking that money and they're dispersing it in the community to have the most impact. You can go to pearljam.com and click on the Home Shows tab, and it'll show you all that stuff. There's cool infographics and everything. But I'm going to show you just kind of the highlights of the campaign. So we announced the U.S. tours and the shows, the home shows in January, and we created a logo. I went out into the community and I banged on a lot of doors. The doors were at the bottom of like 60-story glass and steel buildings downtown, but got a bunch of buildings involved and like, hey, we want to light up the city. We want to make this thing impactful. So we kicked off that announcement day by raising a big giant flag on top of the Space Needle. Mike McCready went up there and did that. And that night, over the period of that night, we lit up the town with our colors red and green. You can see the top of that building says home. The Home Shows logo is on top of it. It's kind of blurry, so you can't see. And this building here is called the Russell Investment Tower. Every Saturday or Friday after work, they turn all the lights on and they close the blinds and they light up at 12 for the Seahawks for the 12th man. So I went to my friend there that runs that building and I said, hey, can we do something for Pearl Jam? And they jumped on board and we lit up the sky that night. I tried to find a bunch of pictures, but I couldn't find them in a short period of time that I gave myself today. But Safeco Field lit up they don't have lights, but they lit up all of their scoreboards and their ring scoreboards and everything red. And so the bowl was glowing red, 5 or 6 giant buildings. The Great Wheel was lit up with a Pearl Jam logo on it and spinning around. And that's how we launched it. And we got great coverage from the media and worldwide international coverage. And then as we started to roll it out, we enlisted our partners at Live Nation to strategically place that logo everywhere. And we had it plastered everywhere. And we made sure that people knew that we were doing this to raise $10 million for homelessness. And we went out into the community with apprehension of what are people going to say? How are people going to react to this? A lot of people are weary from doing this over and over again. Like they're so tired of the giving money away and trying to fix this problem. But when people saw that it was Pearl Jam and that they were so in, we never got one no. We got one no from maybe the biggest company in the world, but we won't go there right now. But everybody else opened their wallets. Yeah. Everybody else opened their wallets. Everybody opened their hearts and jumped in. We met with the mayor. People were ready to get with Pearl Jam. It was just incredible. It changed the way Seattle feels about Pearl Jam. I can safely say that. So we go to the next slide. I don't even know what it is, but okay, yeah. So in April we did sort of our official announcement event at Safeco Field, and you can see we got a pretty good day in April. We were able to have the roof open, and we got up and we had some of our partners who that live outside were able to come out and tell their story. We had some people that work for nonprofits and other orgs in town that serve these people get up and tell their story. We had some people who helped fund the thing. We had there's actually a football player from the Seattle Seahawks named Frank Clark who suffered from homelessness as a kid, lived in Skid Row in LA, and he got up there and told his story in front of a bunch of peers, and it was incredible. It was an incredible moment. The Mariners were great partners, and we put on this event. Obviously, you could imagine the media outlets in Seattle were happy to jump on board with this. So that was great. So then I think with the next slide, we're going to start talking about beer. Yeah. So one of my friends is this guy called Manny Chow, who owns this brewery called Georgetown Brewing. It's right around the corner from us in Georgetown. They make Manny's, named after him, Manny. I don't know if you guys have Manny's here in Missoula, but it's a really good pale ale. And they're one of those like Seattle great success stories. He's a hardworking dude, and he is an awesome Pearl Jam fan. And when I went to him, I said, hey, we want to do like a collaboration thing, thinking that all along, and this is the way it went with a lot of our partners, is they would take one of their products and they would just slap our Home Shows logo on it and give us a portion of the proceeds. Manny wanted to make a whole beer that was just specifically for us and for the fans. So we got together and we decided we would make a beer that would be great for a hot summer day in August for people that came from all over the world that weren't ready to drink like a Northwest hoppy IPA kind of thing. It's a really drinkable, fun beer with a killer logo. Our logo married with the Georgetown Brewing logo with those flames coming off of it. It's just such a cool thing. So you can go to the next slide. So I enlisted one of the country's most elusive spokesmodels to take a picture with the can of the beer. We ended up, I don't even know what this equates to, but Manny donated a large chunk of each 6-pack and each keg. And the distributor even went in and said, we'll just give you all of our money too. So they wrote us a check for over $100,000 for our partnership with just a beer. And as you can imagine, when the Pearl Jam fans come into town, they know about this beer, they know it's coming. They are going to every store. Where's the beer? I gotta have the beer. The Costco wheels out a pallet, it just goes down like that. So probably one of the coolest collabs I've ever done in my life. And Eddie, who drinks Corona exclusively, even kind of liked it. So another thing about this photo, we took this photo in July, so this is a couple weeks before the home shows, and the Mariners did Pearl Jam night at Safeco Field and donated a bunch of their proceeds. I think they donated $70,000 that night. They also were in for $2 million in-kind donations around the shows as well. Amazing generosity from them. But we did this fireworks night, Pearl Jam night at Safeco Field. And I've been to these fireworks nights before. It's pretty cool. They'll have a soundtrack, they'll do a classical thing, they'll do grunge rock or hip hop or Michael Jackson or whatever, and they're cool, the game's over, and 10,000 people stick around maybe, and they shoot off the fireworks. Well, this night, we sold out the stadium, first of all. We did a big 10 club event, so 10 club members got first crack at all the tickets. There was some VIP packages and stuff like that. They bought all those up. Then they went on sale to the public. They bought them all up. So we sold the place out for like a Friday night game against the Texas Rangers or Houston Astros. That was probably a pretty good game. Anyway, the game happened. Eddie stuck around. Mike and Eddie threw out the first pitch. Eddie threw out the first pitch to Ichiro, his favorite player of all time. The fireworks happened. Eddie stays for the fireworks. Every single person in the whole place stayed for the fireworks show. There's like 45,000 people standing, watching a fireworks show at a baseball game while they're like playing Pearl Jam music. It was one of the coolest, weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. And that kind of was the kickoff for this whole event, where we knew it was, we were in for something special. You can go ahead and show the next one. So I got a drone guy to come out and shoot some shots. I'm sure the FAA and the Secret Service were probably pissed that he put his drone up there in the air. This was the same day, as a matter of fact, that guy stole that airplane and ran it into the island. We had a stadium full of people. Crazy, right? And then the next, you can go on my next slide. Band says goodbye. We just raised $10 million. Thanks for coming out. Pretty awesome night. And then the next one is just the sunset with the flag on the newly remodeled Space Needle. So anyway, that's kind of the stories of the home shows. The takeaway from that is that we didn't really understand the power that music could have to affect a community like that, even our own, that we're so aware of. Yeah.
Expound on the $10 million and tangible successes.
Well, we just started last week, doling it out. So there's no success stories to tell yet. And it's not as easy as saying, okay, we gave $2 million to this group and they put a bunch of people in housing. It's just not that easy. There's a lot of undesignated funds right now that are still being determined where they're going. So there's a whole granting process going on with our advisory committee now. So
Is there still money being funneled in?
yeah,
To,
yeah, we're at 11.7 or something like that, which is crazy. Again, if you go to pearljam.com, if you want to dive into this stuff, you can read a lot more about it. There's a tab in the top right that has that logo on it. You click on that tab, it opens up a microsite that just talks about the home shows. It talks about our partners made some films with some stories being told about people in the community that are homeless or have been homeless or helping the homeless. And if you want to, if you want a good cry, you can watch some of those videos. It's awesome. There's also, like I said, there's a lot of infographics that talk about the recipients of the cash and what they're going to do with it, and you can dive in pretty hard. There's a lot of stuff to cover there.
There's thousands of kids living on the streets of America, and the reason you don't see them is because
They hide.
They hide, because if they get picked up their mothers, they'll take the kids away from
Yeah.
them. Forget what's going on at the border, okay? If you go to any homeless shelter for kids where kids have been taken away from their mothers in this country, those guys at the border are on the Four Seasons compared to what these local homeless shelters are.
In Seattle, they live in their cars.
Yeah.
A lot of families
They
live in
have
their
to hide.
cars. Yeah.
Well, the average home in Seattle's around 700,000 now. I mean, if you're working at 7-Eleven, you're not making, 70
Yeah.
70,000 a year.
Yeah.
Well,
You can't buy a house. You can't buy a $700,000 house for $70,000 a year. By the way, Tom, I don't know how you're
I live in
economics
Missoula,
class.
and our houses are a lot cheaper.
So anyway, I just want to segue from. Sorry, I'll just keep going and on and on. Tom's got interesting stuff to say to you, but I just want to move on from this. As while we were doing this, as you can imagine, this was overwhelming for a small team of people. Even though we did have help from some organizations in town that were really instrumental in doing a lot of the legwork. Meanwhile, we were working on this concert. Well, first of all, 4 more giant stadium shows in Chicago and Boston. Withstanding, we haven't even gotten to that stuff yet. We're trying to hang on to that. But meanwhile, we had this very special event planned here in Missoula. Jeff's hometown, always important to play here. We tend to play here during a senatorial election cycle, and you can probably imagine why. But it's important that the band shows up every 6 years and plays here. For those reasons. And it's also important that we knock it out of the park, So it was stressful because, again, all of our resources being poured into this giant fundraising effort in Seattle. Luckily, we enlisted our friend Whitney Williams, who's back there in the back hiding out. she will be on a panel later, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about this during your panel about the power of music and how you can change the community. But we did this show here in Seattle, or in Missoula, with the express purpose of registering people to vote, because really fundamentally, that's the most important thing that we have going now in our country, I think, is that we have 100 million people that don't vote, and it's ridiculous. And a lot of those people, a significant amount of those people might even be in this room right now. So we keep fighting for people to get registered, get out there and vote. We need this to happen. So Whitney and I and some other local people helped put together this basically a festival, a hippie festival out in the tailgate zone over there, to kind of draw attention to the fact that we have underserved communities in our state that need attention from people, from voters, and issues that are not being addressed. And we wanted to use music as a way to bring people together and talk about that. And so thank you, Whitney. That was awesome. We had a really good time, super successful. I was expecting a few hundred people to be out at that festival, honestly. I was expecting it to be kind of quiet, but the programming was amazing from the stage. The senator came out, the governor came out. It was just incredible. I had so much fun that day, even though it was a stressful, busy day for me. But again, one of the things that makes this band so special is that not only do they care about this shit, but they let us get in there and kind of do it, and we learn a lot and take great pride in it, for sure.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up for questions. We
Really?
got about 10 minutes left. Hey, if you guys have questions for Tim, shoot away.
Has what Pearl Jam's done in Seattle sparked any, are they gonna be a leader as far as other bands doing things in their community?
That's an interesting question. There aren't a lot of other bands, I don't think, that could do anything like this, or that really care to, in a way. I think the more significant thing for our goals is the impact that the band has on its own community, its fans, essentially. So another thing that's impressive to me about Pearl Jam is they have a group of fans that started their own 501c3 that is aligned with Pearl Jam's philanthropic needs. And every show they play around the world, they have a pre-party. And the fans come in, they bring in their Pearl Jam stuff that they want to donate, and they auction or raffle it off, and they raise money, and they get the bar or restaurant or whatever to kick in a piece of the action, and they send a check in from their 501c3 to the Pearl Jam nonprofit Vitalogy Foundation. And they've been doing it for 15 years, every single show. Where's the pre-party? And we don't have to do anything. Sometimes they bump into copyright, like, they can't use Pearl Jam's logos or copyright or trademarks and stuff like that. So sometimes it's kind of a little bit of a thing that we have to deal with. But for the most part, the band doesn't have to touch it. We don't have to touch it. It's just a thing. It's inspiring to them for what Pearl Jam does. There's actually a person here in Missoula that does an organization called Jeff Amon's Army that kind of focuses on Jeff's thing. And I think they have a 501c3 now, and they're donating money to Jeff's skateboard park initiatives.
Okay, yes.
I'm just interested in the fan base, how large it is,
Mhm.
and how you continue to grow that fan base over time, knowing
Yeah.
that you have and if you could talk a little bit about the layers of a super fan, an engaged
Yeah.
fan, and an ambient fan, and maybe talk about how you move maybe an ambient fan up to the engaged and.
Yeah. We don't try to move anybody around. There's not a real way to make someone more of a fan than to have the band be good.
I totally get that.
There's no magic pill that we're gonna marketing thing or even deliverable or offering that we're gonna put out there, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm a sideline Pearl Jam fan. When they come to my town, I go see them. But if they offer me a new thing, I'm not gonna join the fan club. The fan club it's the fan club. It's the people that, they've invested in the band for life. And they are in, and they are proud of that. That kind of stuff you can't really market and sell. It has to sell itself. So I talk to a lot of managers that are like, oh, the band wants to start a fan club, but they don't want to charge for it because they think that the fans will feel like they're ripping them off and it's a cash grab and everything. It's like, well, then you're fucked, because if you're just going to give away shit, it doesn't have a value. People see that right away. But if you have something that they want, those exclusive tickets or those exclusive merchandise offerings, and you have to do something to get to it, that's when you have people engaged, and that's when people care. If you invest your $40 a year in a Pearl Jam fan club membership, you expect to be part of that community, and we have to deliver that. And I think that that's super important, and no one really does it anymore. I mean, people do it, don't get me wrong, but as far as the size of the club goes, we don't talk about the number of members that we have, the subscribing members, just because we like to stay out of the conversations about who's got more and who's got what, and let's just say it's big and significant.
Is it spread out all over,
All over the world, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Rodell?
Yeah, were there particular campaigns where you saw big bumps in membership?
Any tour. Any tour, yeah. Because it's all, really the main thing is ticketing. The main driver of membership is ticketing, right? So if we do have, when we announce a tour, we always say, if you're in the fan club now, you're eligible for fan club ticketing. If you join today, then you're eligible for the next time we do a tour. So we don't announce a tour and then let people join up and then take their money and try to get them tickets. So, but of course, an album cycle, which is every 5 years now for this band, like it's such a rare occurrence that, yeah, of course there's gonna be activity around that. And again, we're not trying necessarily to grow the numbers of the fan club subscribers. We look at the number that we have right now as being almost too much now for being able to super serve as far as the number of tickets that were allotted and how to get those, essentially how to get that many people in the building each night when we play in these bigger buildings and stuff. So we don't want to just increase the membership just for money, because it makes it worse for everybody.
Yeah, one thing amazing about this band is, if you think about it, they started in 1990. All 4 of the core members, you've had 3 different drummers, but Matt Cameron's been with you for 20 years. So they've got the same members of the band. They've still got the same management team. You've had a long-time agent, and Tim's been there for 20-some years. And it's a rare thing that bands last this long and maintain the level that they have. And they keep growing. That's the most amazing thing. You know, there's very few bands that get to a certain point and don't go down. These guys just keep taking it to the next level.
Yeah, to your point, the developing new fans and stuff, like, it's crazy. And it's also another thing that kind of ties in with the Grateful Dead in a way, is that the generational thing is crazy. Like the parents writing in the fan club saying, hey, I have this really low fan club number. I'd like to make sure that my kids can use this fan club number, because I'm not really going to the shows that much anymore. And I'd like for them to be able to have these things. And the kids are there. They really are. So.
Yes.
You said, so pretty much every tour, most of the soundboards get released. Is there a certain way, is it just saving for special shows that they may perform where they might keep one, hold it back, and kind of create some hype?
Yeah, there's been a
before
couple
they
of
do?
times where there's been things happen that weren't good, that get held back,
So they don't particularly say, hey, we're gonna keep this show, we're gonna go all
There's
out,
been a couple of
build
those
some
too.
hype, and then
There's
maybe
been a couple
release
of
it.
those. But then they just get forgotten about, oh, we still have PGA 20 from Alpine Valley. What are we gonna do with that? I don't know, we gotta save it for the perfect thing, but.
Yeah.
And they're not soundboards, by the way, they're actually recorded off stage with the full Pro Tools do
Okay.
that. So it's a different mix, it's not just taking the front of house mix, just so you know.
Nice.
First of all, I'd like to say how impressed I am by your skill set, you know, and
Mine?
yeah.
A record store guy.
I'm like, wow.
Thank you.
And
He's a people person.
did you say you did geology? Was that?
Geology, yeah.
So if you had to say like a chronostratigraphy of your skill set from the early days to now, and you're talking to, say, a student that's in an entertainment management program,
Yeah.
how would you put that chronostratigraphy in terms of what are the most important skills to start and what you have to develop to?
Yeah.
And also, just as an aside, I'm up here from the Rio Grande Valley.
Uh-huh.
And so, and I know that statement as to forget about the people at the border wasn't meant to be in a negative. I'm
Yeah.
sure that's.
Yeah, we're not gonna forget about them for sure. I think he was just using it as a comparative thing, right? Yeah, as far as like the stratigraphy of skills, and this ties into a lot of the stuff we talked about yesterday too. Number one thing is, with any job out there, it's like you gotta be willing to put yourself out there and work your ass off, right? So, when I started doing panels, at the beginning of the dot-com boom, people, the young artists would come in and they'd say, what's, MySpace, should I put my music on MySpace? What's the magic bullet? How do I get my music out there? And at one point I was just like, I was laughing, I was like, well, I have a 3-step process for young artists. Number 1, don't suck. Number 2, be awesome. And number 3, work your ass off, right? So people, like Austin's not gonna wanna, he's gonna smell through all of those things as soon as that person comes in to try to pitch themselves. So yeah, hard work, number 1. Don't be afraid to get out there and find those internships. They're out there. The talent pool is light right now. Like there are jobs for you guys in this program. There really are. All you have to do is work. Don't be lazy. You're not going to get a job anywhere. If you work your ass off and take advantage of the things that you have and all the opportunities you have just in this program alone, these people in this room here, you can get a job. As far as like skill sets go, I don't know. I mean, you got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to laugh at yourself. I was talking to my friend Charlie earlier today about how I think it's weird when people say, "Oh, that guy thinks he's so cool," and I was like, "Yeah, I hope that you think you're cool. If you don't think you're cool, why are you even doing anything? Like people need to be confident and happy, and if you're a tech person and you want to get out in the tech world and there's a lot of money there and you have the opportunity and you can work hard and you can get out there and do it, that's great. Music business, you have those opportunities too and all those things there, but you also have the music. It's music, man. It's like magic. It's cool. It's passion and all the things. It's like we're lucky we get to do this. So you put those two things together and you're off and running.
All right. So it's 1 o'clock. I want to thank Tim Berman very much for his time, and we're going to have another panel in 15 minutes. We'll take a break, and this is the start of a great afternoon, folks. Thank you.